Hello everyone and welcome back to Metal Tiger Gaming. Haven't done these videos in a minute, but I had to kind of say something. I was really excited to see that Cyberpunk had an update. We'll get to that in a moment. If you haven't already, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share. We're trying to get a 25 subscriber special, so make sure you guys go ahead and help me get to that point. And on to the main topic for today. Was really excited the other day when I saw Cyberpunk finally had an update. It was being really buggy. The problem is that right after this update, after you try to get into it, your car falls through the streets a ton. It also slows everything down. It's even more buggy than before. I'm not entirely sure what CD Projekt Red did with that, but at this point it's entirely unplayable. I tried to go back into it several times to try to play it, and it just didn't work. So I think at that point, I think I'm going to have to unfortunately toss my hat into the ring here and just say that I can't play it anymore. I'm just going to probably do the review now. And when I can actually go through to play the game, I will. And I think we just got to move on to more PlayStation 5 content, which I think the next game I'm going to play is probably Ghost of Tsushima. I know I technically laid in PlayStation 4 into the PlayStation 5, but I'm getting real tired of having to put that game off. I've been really excited about it, so I think that's the next game we're going to play. But for now, let's go ahead and get into the review. So I think that the biggest issue so far with Cyberpunk 2077, outside of the bugs, which we'll get to here in a minute, is just the amount of crappy driving in the game. I mean, absolutely garbage. They have had so many issues with driving. I mean, if you're trying to brake, it doesn't work. Your car will continue to go for 20, 30, 40, 50 feet. Doesn't really matter what car you drive. It just all kind of does the same thing. Turning is hot garbage. No matter how much you try to do it, the turn's way off. If you try to turn too early, it just sharply turns it. It makes it really random, and that's probably the buggiest part of the game so far, is probably the driving. There's also been a lot of moments where I'm trying to change my perspective from first person to third person, and it doesn't work. Trying to get in or out of a vehicle sometimes just doesn't work. So I think the map is okay as far as when you're driving. The only issue is that like on my giant 65-inch HD ultra high def television, it's like this big in the top right corner. And another big issue with the bugs that they have with driving is if you were to say open your inventory while you're driving and then try to come back into it, you'll be driving and all of a sudden your indicator for how to get there on the map disappears. It just disappears. And it'll usually be gone for a good 30 to 45 seconds, which obviously is frustrating because if you're trying to get from mission to mission, it makes it very hard to do that because you can't actually get into your mission points. I think that the car's speed also doesn't really matter. They all seem to go the same exact speed. I mean, handling differs a little bit. I think the best car I've been able to drive that's had the least amount of issues is the actual Porsche 911. That's actually Silverhand's car. Probably the best, and probably makes sense since I think the game, going forward without any spoiler alerts, this is the only spoiler alert I'm going to try to give you, is that I think the game is trying to push you to become Johnny Silverhand, which is pretty obvious going through the game, but given that I can't literally play it without having a bug happen where I'm running, falling through, or anything like that, I can't tell you for sure, and I probably won't for a while until CD Projekt Red finally decides that they're going to update it again and hopefully get rid of the bugs. One thing I think that they could fix for that, I think, is maybe adding a garage to either update the stats for like handling, braking, things like that, or like changing the color, because you can't change the color of the vehicles. And I think given that you can make your character, your avatar, into anything that you want, I mean, I think that should have been a given in the game. And I think that would have been probably the cherry on top. And we'll get to that here in a minute. That being said, there should also have been a gunsmith that makes more sense than what is in the game. I think a lot of the things that you try to get into the game makes less sense. For example, when you get a gun, there's a ton of things that matter when you get a gun. I mean, you have your character's development, you have your abilities, you have your actual perks that you choose, which we'll get to in a minute. That was a pain in the neck. It also depends on the three multi-layer types. So there's three main types in the game. You have the smart, you have the power, and you have the tech. Tech is usually more if you're able to do a certain thing. Like usually these are the charge rifles. Smart, you can shoot around the corner, and power is just like you just shoot somebody and they die in one shot. That's, I mean, creative on that part. Um, the more mod slots, there are mod slots you can amplify your guns capabilities. However, the gun stores that you can buy these mods at are very far and few between. They're usually across maps, things like that. One thing I would also indicate too here is that trying to get credits or eddies, as it is in the game, is extremely hard to do sometimes. And like you basically get up a bunch of money, have to spend it all in one go. Get a bunch of money, have to spend it all in one go. It's not really consistent. I think like other games, like one game that this reminds me of a lot is Grand Theft Auto, but it was very poorly done. It's basically like if everybody decided to go on college spring break, got drunk, and decided to make Grand Theft Auto. This is what they came up with. I think the cooler things about this game, I think, are the customizations. I mean, you can put nicer scopes or silencers or extra magazines like that on your gun to make them better. I don't think that it actually impacts the game at all. I really don't. I think there's a lot of things that happen in this game that make it look like it matters, but it really doesn't. That being one of them. I think the game is more authentic in that, though, that it actually allows you to have that customization. But I think, again, and we'll get to the cons here in a minute, they should have had a customization option for you to see things from third person. But again, we'll get to that in a minute. Again, I think one thing they could have done to make that a little bit better is go to a gunsmith, at least be able to paint it, put designs on it, change the colors of the scopes, whatever. I mean, the amount of time you spend creating your character in the beginning of the game is insane. I mean, you probably spend 10, 15, 20 minutes trying to get a character in. Of course, that's how long I took because I wanted to check all the options, see what was what. But, I mean, for you, maybe 5, 10 minutes. I don't know. Another thing that was really weird about the game was the clothing. Clothing is actually probably the easiest thing to deal with in Cyberpunk. You basically just choose in your inventory, either put it on there or you take it off. You can put on whole suits if you don't like whatever you're wearing as far as the aesthetic, not that you can actually ever see it. And every item usually gives you different armor rates. So like a vest might give you 120 armor, but a t-shirt might give you 140. I don't know the math on that. I'm assuming it's probably just based on your actual character development, what you choose to put your stats and other skills towards. Tech is kind of the same way. So in the game, there's something called a Ripper Dock, which you can modify your arms. And one of the coolest things, well, your arms, your legs, your chest, your head, your ears, your heart. I mean, whatever you want to change, really, you can. That's also why I think some of the customization options that they have lacked was kind of surprising. Because, I mean, you can literally modify everything in and on your person, but you can't modify cars or guns or even clothing for this matter. You can't change colors. You can't determine how it looks. You can't even see yourself in third person, which sucks. Tech is kind of the same way. The only issue I have with that is it's not intuitive. Like, I mean, they basically just drop you into a Ripper Dock for one of the missions and just, like, figure it out. And then it's really kind of hard to get back into it because there's not really a lot of place you can find, like, legendary Ripper Dock items or anything like that. If I'm wrong, let me know in the comments, but I've been playing this game for probably close to 40, 45 hours now, and I haven't been able to see anything. And right now, again, as I said, it's unplayable. So maybe some of you guys who had more time to dedicate to getting it done found it, but I just couldn't find it. It allows you access to clothing, weapons, and tech that you're currently under-leveled for, which I thought was really kind of stupid. So imagine, like, you were to walk into a clothing store and you're able to purchase your favorite pair of jeans, and then you get home and you realize you can't wear them because you're not high enough level. That doesn't make sense to me. That's another one of those things that would have a impact, I think, on the game because you have access to things you can't use, which to me makes no sense because, again, this game is about being who you are, your most authentic self. You can be whatever you want to be, and for some reason, they don't allow you to have access to certain things, which makes no sense because a pair of pants is a pair of pants. You should be able just to put them on, but maybe I'm wrong. I think giving players access to those kinds of items is erroneous just due to the reward system that's inherent into the video game, because you can also get items from like boss fights or like looting a high level area. You can get these items, but you can't use them until they're a certain level. Like one of the items I have currently in my inventory, I can't be using it until I'm level 35, which makes no sense to me because I've had it since I was like level 16. And it's not even that good. The things I have currently equipped are better than that. So I don't really quite understand why that's there. The whole game, I think, and this is for any game that you play, should be designed in the way that the player interacts with the world. So I think that in real life, like I was explaining earlier, you wouldn't come into access to something that they can't access, with the caveat, obviously, that it's financially available to them, right? If I were to walk into a Bugatti showroom and I'm like, hey man, hook me up with a Bugatti. The guy goes, you got the money? And I'm like, no. Right. I mean, obviously, if it's given to me, if somebody gives me a Bugatti, for example, I should be able to drive it. Right. And this cyberpunk logic here is that you can be given a Bugatti, but you can't drive it. You can look at it, but you can't drive it. No sense to me. And also, I know that video games are not real life. I obviously understand that. But I think that given that this is supposed to be a fantasy RPG type world, we're supposed to be able to have access to those kinds of things. Because, I mean, for those of us who are poor, or less financially stable, or less financially secure, or less financially rich, I guess. These video games are kind of a way for us to kind of get out of it and kind of just do what we need to do. I think the next part of it too is that leveling your character is probably the coolest part of the game, because it's based on how you play. So, for example, if my character, the way I played my character anyway, is that I usually got like weapons like either an axe or a crowbar or not an axe, sorry, a baseball bat, a sword, a knife, a wrench, whatever, and I'd run around with it and I'd hit people with it. So it'd give me athletic scores, it'd give me street baller scores, and things like that. And that part's pretty easy. I mean, that's not really a difficult thing, because after you end up getting into a certain stat point, you'll see that items start to increase. Like my baseball bat that I have currently right now does like 1,500 damage or something like that, which is pretty cool. Actually using your stats or abilities is confusing, as they're actually hard to see in the function of the game. So this also means, like, for example, because I am a street brawler, and my street brawler skills I think are probably the highest ones, and I'll go fight somebody with it, and then they'll hit me one time and I'm dead. Then that shouldn't happen. So obviously there's some leveling issues here that they need to be addressed. But again, bugs are in here in galore, and I'll list some ones that I've noticed while I was playing it later. I think that's probably the strongest point of the game, though, is that you can actually build your character any way you want to. And I know I sound like I'm giving it some praise, but I'll explain to you why a lot of this is kind of like, got to take with a grain of salt. So far, the character arcs that I'm able to see, Johnny's is great from what I was able to tell. I'm not going to get into any spoilers in case you guys just don't want to play the game. V's is okay. I mean, you basically find this thing that's trying to kill you, and you got to live with it. I mean, that's pretty much it. They killed off a character that I thought was unnecessary, but it's important because it gives an impact. It actually has storylines based on it. I don't know if it's something that's avoidable yet, because I don't see anybody that's running this game 24/7 yet. So, I don't know if it's something that's avoidable or it's just hard programmed. I think the over-concerning development with becoming a huge monster or becoming a legend is completely overrated. I mean, again, this kind of seems like an idea that was basically ripped off of Grand Theft Auto, and I think that maybe Rockstar Games should have just made this. I feel like it probably would have been a lot better. I mean, I know certainly their driving apparatuses that they use are a lot better, and their driving coding is a lot better, and it's a lot less glitchy even online. But we're going to get to that. And so I feel like the storyline was mostly successful from what I've been able to play because of Johnny, which is also played by Keanu Reeves, in case you guys didn't know. So when I'm saying Johnny, I mean his character, Johnny Silverhand. So I think that the storyline with Johnny is successful because of the fact that you have such a drastic change between when he's introduced into the game versus where I'm at. I don't know how it ends yet, because like I said, it's literally unplayable. So I think the other issue I have with V is that it's inconsistent. So a lot of it is like her freaking out and her being like, oh, never mind, or they're, nervous, or they're excited, or whatever about one thing or the other. So it's really inconsistent. So I'm going to get into the next segment of this video, which I think I'm going to start adding into all of the videos, called the good, the bad, and the ugly for the video games. So I'm going to kind of go over the good first, because it's probably the shortest list, unfortunately. But I think the overall, it's the game that everybody wanted. I think in ideological terms, not necessarily in fulfillment. That just kind of means that it kind of fit everyone's idea of what the game was going to look like, and they delivered. I think that I did find some enjoyment overall. I didn't think that it was something that I was like, oh my god, I'm gonna go replay this again, like classic titles like Spider-Man or Last of Us or Metal Gear Solid or Crash Bandicoot or Jak and Daxter or Sly Cooper. For my older gamer fans, you guys know what those are. And apparently, in case you guys didn't know this, they did remake Jak and Daxter for the PlayStation 4, although it's super duper expensive. So it's on Amazon. The art and the detail within Cyberpunk was actually pretty great. I liked a lot of the art. I think it was really good. I think it made it very immersive. There's even whole missions dedicated to trying to find certain amounts of art by certain people, that kind of thing. So I think it's really cool. And a lot of people were kind of worried about the transphobia that was in it, but I didn't see anything outside of that one particular like advertisement. And I understand that trying to profit off a group that's not the majority is wrong, but that was the only thing that was in there, so I guess that's a plus. They're less crappy people than everyone thought they were. Like, congratulations. The diversity of the characters in the game, though, was pretty awesome, because it wasn't that you could just make your own character like trans. You can also, there's actually other characters in game that are trans that actually impact the story. A lot of people of color in there too, so that was really cool. Just different age groups, things like that. So I thought that was really cool. And I think it also had some authenticity. That was at least, the storyline was at least somewhat different. The actual world behind it was different. It's not like anything else I've ever seen. Although it kind of just feels like a mashup between Borderlands and Grand Theft Auto. So, that being said, let's get into the bad part of this game. So, it was probably the most buggy game I've ever played. There are several. I mean, like I said before, there was the issue where you would be driving and you fall through the floor. That's what's going on right now. You could even walk and you fall through the floor. It's almost as if it's having trouble trying to load the next area while you're running or driving, which should not be happening. Because that's been solved since, like, PlayStation. Like, what are we doing? And it's not on the PlayStation, obviously, but they've been having this software to work with the PlayStation, and they should not be having that issue, because pre-update, they didn't have that issue. So I don't know what's going on. It constantly kicked me off the game with zero warning. Like, I'd be running, and all of a sudden it just crashes. And it wouldn't actually work for it to continue. So what that means is it would literally kick me completely out and then demand that I send a report, which obviously I would do because I don't want that happening to you guys. But it would also just completely reset. I'd go back in. It was my current last save point. Not even right before it happened. So I'd go through whatever mission. And I mean, I think the most times it would happen, and I tried to stream this game and I stopped doing it because I was literally getting kicked off probably an average 3 or 4 times. And it was ridiculous. Now I'm not getting kicked off. I'm just falling through the roof. I mean, I'm just falling through the floor of the game every 10 minutes. So, and it's not even letting me try to put in an error code either. It's just like, cool, you're falling forever. Awesome. Another thing, too, is that this is way too raunchy, I think. I mean, if you guys are people who are thinking to buy this for their kids, obviously don't. There's ratings for a reason. Read them and adhere to them. But this is just way too much. I mean, it was almost, again, I really think it was just a bunch of people who went on spring break from college at a frat house and decided they were going to make this game because it's just way too much. It eases off a little bit later, but I mean, it's still very woven into the story, which, I mean, I guess that's what it's going to rock your boat. But frankly, I just don't think that it's worth it. And I think that we're going to get to the next portion called The Ugly. And I think the largest complaint I have is that it has minimal updates since it came out. I mean, when I played it, I think it had one update before then, and the second update that I saw happen was literally yesterday, the day before, and it's been unplayable since. And I think that's one of the biggest issues, is that CD Projekt Red was like, oh, here you go, guys. Here's a game for you. And then they were like, just kidding. And then they basically even admitted that they weren't ready for it to launch. So I have no idea why they launched it. I understand there's the peer pressure from everyone else wanting to see the game, but that's not an excuse that you should use. I mean, people went out there and they spent money, and yeah, they did a buyback program and they tried to do that whole thing, but that just looks bad for you and your company going forward. I mean, I think it's probably the ugliest part of it. I mean, and not only that, but they also face a whole allegation issue with being transphobic before the game even came out. And then they have the fact that their game didn't even work. So I don't know what we'll be seeing from CD Projekt Red in the future. Although I don't think we're going to be seeing anything, because that's rough. I mean, two beats within a year. That's tough, man. And I think that the other issue is that it definitely should have been a next-gen game, and I think that it would have absolved a lot of issues, because formatting for PlayStation 5 is going to be a little different than it is for PlayStation 4. And I know this because games like Monster Hunter or Bloodborne actually have to take some of the graphics out because the PlayStation 5 won't let them play it, which might be why some of the issues with Cyberpunk being buggy, dropping you, stuff like that happen, is because the PlayStation 5 just moves at a much faster rate than the PlayStation 4 does. So I think that they were just trying to maximize profit and minimize the actual playability of the game, which if that's why you're building video games, stop, get out, and let somebody else do it, because that's not why you should be doing this. And I think their articles are CD Projekt Red that have basically just, they're going to start tanking here. I don't know how much better they're going to do. Their merch is freaking sweet for Cyberpunk, but I don't know if that's really even enough to keep something up and floating. So some of these gamers that have had time with Cyberpunk, mostly the PC game community, have actually found hilarious mods for the game. And I think that once you get to a point where your game is basically just for mod hilarity, I don't know if that's what you intended. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, because there's actually some games that actually started out as a regular game, found out it's really funny to mod, and then it came out. Hence sandbox games. That's what they were. That's why they're there. But this was not intended to be a sandbox game, so that's why I think that whole bit there too is ugly, because this was a game that you were supposed to be presenting seriously for serious people to play, and that's not what happened. It definitely 100% should have been third person. I have no idea why they were thinking it'd be a good first person game. The best first person games are Call of Duty. They've had that forever, and that's not going to change, because your character does not change that much. The amount of times that you get to see it is fantastic. I mean, it's like 2 or 3 times in a game maybe, and that's before the pre-loading screen, post-loading screen, and if you want a game of Warzone, right in there. So that's where you're at. And you see your character in Call of Duty way more often than you do in Cyberpunk. The only time you can see Cyberpunk is when you pause it. That's it. And I think it just needs massive improvement to get a decent rating for me. And I think that with that being said, the rating system on this is, and I cannot express this enough, Godfall is hot garbage. Okay, absolute hot garbage. So I cannot rate it any lower than Godfall. So that being said, it has to come in at a 6 out of 10. And that's me being generous. If I did half points, I would give it a 5.5. But it's about a 6 out of 10. I think it had massive concerns with bugging out constantly. But that was also balanced out with decent graphics. And I think it definitely should have been next gen. I think, again, they were just trying to push on every console they could to make as much money as they could, rather than trying to fix the issues ahead of time. And that is one of the actual main reasons why it kept getting pushed back before release, was because they were trying to format it for the PlayStation, the Switch, the Xbox. They were trying to format it for everything, rather than trying to actually fix the issues ahead of time, which just makes you laughable as a developer. And I think the other reason why I wanted it to be next-gen console is because there's so many cool things that they could have done. And so far, I haven't had a lot of experience, because, again, there hasn't been a lot of actual PlayStation 5 solidified games yet. But no game outside of Call of Duty Black Ops has actually used the haptic feedback in the controllers. Which is why I think this game would have been a perfect candidate for it. That's why I think they should have just waited and released it for next gen. And I'm not saying that they shouldn't have done it for PlayStation 4 either, but at least waited for a second wave for that coded PlayStation 5 system to come out. But now I don't think anyone's going to buy it. I mean, frankly, I wouldn't. And I wouldn't waste your money. If you guys are thinking about buying it, I just wouldn't do it. It's just not worth it. And I think that the only time I would seriously recommend people buying and playing this game is if they were to get serious about revamping it and fixing all the bugs I think the game would be fantastic after that. I think that there would be a lot of happy campers, happy gamers. I mean, it would be a huge relief to see this game actually meet its potential, because I think it had a huge potential threshold, and I think it just fell short a lot. So again, I think the most I can give this game is 6 out of 10. And that's only because Godfall was so bad. I'm going to try to go back to Godfall here in the next month or so and try to see if it's just as bad as I remember it. If not, we'll have to do a rediscussion about some updates, because Godfall's had probably 2 or 3 updates since I beat it in that first week of it being released. And I haven't heard from it since. So that being said, like I said, if you guys haven't already, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share. We're trying to get a 25 subscriber special. We're trying to get there. And that being said, the subscriber special is I'm going to put everybody in a lot, and whoever ends up getting picked from my subscribers is going to get to pick any game they want that's actually based off PlayStation. I'm also trying to work on trying to get streaming services set up for the Switch, because I do a lot of Pokemon gameplay in my own time, and Pokemon's one of my favorite games ever, so I'm going to start trying to figure out how to stream that stuff. But for right now, I just want to kind of focus on PlayStation gaming. If I don't have the game, I'll get the game. I mean, that's what you guys are allowed to as being my subscribers, is that I will provide to you guys what you guys want at certain periods. So make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.